Hi, I'm Estrella Nouri, and today I want to tell you about how together we can change the world. A few years ago, I was introduced to a new initiative called Water on Demand and how it has the potential to save our most vital resource, water. Water across the globe is in trouble, and unfortunately, the United States is no exception with droughts, soaring water rates, and decreased quality. Today, the US recycles less than 1% of its wastewater. On top of that, industry and agriculture account for 89% of freshwater usage in the US, which they then pollute and send back into the already broken and old systems controlled by local governments. And now those government bodies are telling businesses, we can't take your water anymore. Sorry, treat it yourself. The challenge for these businesses is that it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to treat their own water. Expensive machines, installation, expertise, and maintenance. They just can't do it. But with Water on Demand, we are giving investors the ability to invest in water systems that can be dropped in place to create instant infrastructure for businesses and communities. Water gets treated and recycled. And as those consumers use water, they pay for it, just like they already pay for their own water bills. Now, for the first time ever, you can invest in the biggest disruption the water industry has ever seen. We could be sitting on the opportunity of a lifetime, and we are. Learn more about Water on Demand by visiting us online at waterondemand.net.
Wow, that is Estrella Nouri, and we have some amazing news tonight about her. Robert Baxter says, well, hello, and likewise, hello. Congrats on episode 200. Thank you, Bill. It's nice to have the fan club. And Keith Ruitt, an awesome introduction. Yes, I agree, Keith. She is so well spoken about what we do. She knows how to say it, and she understands it. Amazing. All right, briefing number 200. And March 2nd, welcome. Of course, we have the usual disclaimers. And one of the cool things that happened last week, Saturday, was we appeared on New to the Street. The recording that was done earlier in the month appeared on Newsmax, on Bloomberg, and Fox Business. So I thought you would enjoy seeing this as it appeared.
East Palestine, Ohio has seen a train derailment. It's led to hazardous waste for miles around that area. And there is a possible solution that could help with these kinds of things. So with me is the CEO of Origin Clear, Riggs Eckelberry, to talk about this situation. I mean, it's just so in the news now. How would what your company do prevent or perhaps change the situation that we're seeing in Ohio?
Well, Jane, it's a pleasure being on board again. And I wanted to say that East Palestine is an illustration of how fragile our lives are with respect to water. Water, we can't go 3-4 days without water. So anytime it could happen. It happened to East Palestine, but frankly, it could happen anywhere. So the problem really is that our infrastructure in America is $1 trillion behind in accumulated deficit since 1961. We just haven't kept up. As a result, it gets more and more overburdened, and it's not the city's fault, they're just underfunded. The solution, we believe, is to radically decentralize water treatment so the businesses that generate all that dirty water treat their own dirty water, and it's a good thing for them too.
Yeah. So basically what Origin Clear offers is a way for an affordable way for small businesses, farms, things like that to treat and recycle their own water, so that relieves some burden off the municipalities, right?
Exactly.
And helps with some of these, situations. And you mentioned the debt. I mean, we're seeing so much government debt right now that a lot of cities can't pay for what it takes to upgrade these systems.
Well, let's even imagine that someone would write $1 trillion check for water, which they're not going to. How do you do it? Who wants a sewage plant next to their home?
Okay.
It's the giant sewage plant era is gone. Now it's going to be small is beautiful. And the key is to downsize the big sewage systems. You see them on the Hudson River, right? Giant sewage systems.
Yeah.
Well, you got to downsize them And we have breakthrough patented technology for doing that. We call it modular water systems as part of the Origin Clear suite. And we literally call them water systems in a box. So you're a brewer, you got a lot of water needs. You make beer, you don't worry about wastewater. So one of those things goes in the corner, takes care of it. And our new initiative, Water on Demand, enables them to do it without paying money up front. They just pay by the gallon like they used to with the city. We take over from the city.
Yeah. So say I'm a small business and I want to use your services. How do I even start? Where does the water come from? How does the whole thing begin?
Okay, there's 3 phases to water. The first is the incoming water. Generally, it comes from the city. You're not going to dig a well usually, right? Secondly is the treatment of the water you just made dirty. And third is recycling it for irrigation, to wash down your equipment, whatever it is, right? Maybe even make beer with, I don't know.
Okay.
So all that's good. Well, this is all good because we have these legendary droughts and we're not reusing the water. You know, Israel recycles almost 90% of its water.
Okay.
America, 1%. Now, why? Because just like our energy grid, we have an old infrastructure. So it only thinks one thing: treat and throw away, treat and throw away. A disposable economy. We need to start thinking very sustainably. Now, for investors, it's a huge opportunity. Why? Because anytime a monopoly breaks up, look at what happened to AT&T. Generated, MCI, the baby bells, even the internet today, all came from that one breakup. So you have a vast explosion of opportunity, and we believe that's going on right now in water today. Origin Clear is leading the pack, and we have our modular water systems, which are the downsized systems, and Water on Demand, which is this great way of financing it for people so they pay by the gallon instead of the $1 million up front.
Got it. So, and I'm hearing recycling is a big part of what you're offering.
100%.
So it's the same water. It's just being recycled and treated, and we're using it over and over again at these businesses, right?
And this is why the businesses like it, because they don't have to pay again for that water, right? They get more than one turn out of it, and they get a nice predictable service contract, fully managed. They don't have to worry a bit about it. And I mean, everything's going to services, right? Why not water? I mean, we're thinking like, oh, now you got to get a water expert and you got to spend a bunch of money. No, just sign a contract and we'll take care of it for you. So, in fact, Water on Demand is so powerful that we are planning to let everyday investors, unaccredited investors, because I think it's a scandal that only the 1% can. I hate that.
I know. I've always hated that too.
Oh my God.
I understand the
Up to a
philosophy
point,
behind
why?
it, but
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Well,
So-
widows and orphans is a good reason, but the innovation of these unaccredited, it's called Regulation A, is fantastic. There's so much more power in having an army of investors instead of a few, deep pockets, because it creates, just like a political campaign does better with a lot of small donations, right? It's a similar thing. So Water on Demand is going to be opening up for, shares in this amazing new water as a service. I expect pretty soon, and certainly I hope by the time we talk again.
Yeah. Well, and decentralization is a big kind of theme with your company. Decentralization of water.
Literally extreme decentralization, because the only way we can scale up is by doing it locally, not centrally. Look at India, for example. They have no infrastructure whatsoever. What are they going to do? They're not going to spend trillions. Not going to happen. Okay, but how about on-site water treatment for homes, housing developments, for businesses, agriculture? And now it's manageable. You can scale up.
Yeah, so this could be international as well. So now, we've talked last time about how notoriously difficult it is to invest in water and water companies. How can somebody find out more about Origin Clear?
Well, I'm glad you asked.
Yeah.
We are a penny stock. We've been a penny stock for a long time. OCLN is a ticker, OCLN. And what I have been doing is, with my team, we've been turning this into the water industry's first incubator. The water industry doesn't do incubators. I came from high tech. They sort of, you build a company and you sell it to the big guy. That's, well, the industry needs incubators for all that technology. That's Origin Clear. And so the companies we're launching, including this Water on Demand, are, super interesting. So yes, you can invest in Origin Clear, the parent, and get a piece of that launch pad. And now you'll be able to invest in Water on Demand with that new unaccredited thing, which will come along soon. The key is to go to originclear.com, green button, invest now,
Okay.
And we'd love to
They
have
can
you.
take a look and read everything.
It's all there.
Okay, thanks so much, Riggs. I look forward to our next interview, and you can update us on this.
I can't wait.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
So yeah, imagine that having appeared, on national TV. So I think it was some great exposure. We saw some immediate traction from it. So that was just fantastic. And then there was, I'm going to just play a short piece. I'm going to show you, there was an interview that was done on streaming platforms, multiple streaming platforms immediately after. I'm only going to, it's 24 minutes long. I'm not going to play the whole thing because you'll kill me. But I'll give you a taste of it right now.
Coming to you live with the insight you need from the financials and political capitals of the world to the heart of innovation. This is Opportunities to Consider with your host, author, speaker, and corporate strategist, Hunter Gaylor.
How's it going, everyone? And welcome to another episode of New to the Street, where this is our digital version and we're coming to you, where we bring the in-depth conversations with the CEOs that are changing industry, but not just changing industry, leading industry change. And today I have the pleasure of being joined right here live on the digital platform, streaming across all platforms today, with the CEO of Origin Clear, who you just listened to the intro from, and I want to bring him in here now. This is CEO Riggs, who is the chairman and CEO of Origin Clear. Thank you so much for being with us today. I'm very much looking forward to speaking with you.
Hunter, it's such a pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Well, listen, obviously water is something that's very important, and we saw in your opening video that you are really doing this, really the first industry that I've ever looked into where it's water on demand. Normally we would think water on demand is walking into your local convenience store or grocery store and taking a water from the shelf. But this is really an industry that has not really been disrupted from what I understand. So I really want to just dive in deep with you and go through some of the real world things that you're doing and really hear straight from you and the leadership of Origin Clear of what you're doing. And I really want to start with something that I think is relevant for a lot of the people that listen across all of our networks. And, we hear about the problems in cities like Flint, Michigan. These are very isolated instances, or are they a symptom of a greater problem?
Right. That's a really good point. And, it's just like, when you see one cockroach, there's 100 cockroaches behind the wall. That's kind of the problem we've got with water. And the problems are popping up more and more. We have, of course, Flint, which has been an ongoing problem. There was a big mess in Compton a few years ago. Jackson, Mississippi, late last year blew up. Fort Lauderdale, despite being a wealthy community, has had a lot of problems. Also, there is a growing water problem in the Ohio River watershed as a result of that major derailment that occurred in East Palestine. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about the fact that the municipalities, the public utilities, have been underfunded for many years. In fact, since 1961, so this is not one particular administration, there's been an underfunding of the infrastructure that was built pre-war that was wonderful, right? So there was this wonderful infrastructure and then nobody maintained it. Meanwhile, industry grew, more population, more toxins, and we have a system that's basically broken.
Well, it's very interesting because this is obviously very relevant because of the incident that just recently happened in East Palestine, Ohio. And people are talking about this. We're having government leaders that are even reluctant to drink some of the own tap water, as we saw in some of the news outlets. But should we be worried about the release of some of these toxic chemicals into the ground, such as what happened recently in Ohio? And what can we do about it? What should we be doing about it? And what role is Origin Clear playing in this incident?
Well, very good question. Let's set the stage here. 90% of all water demand is by industry and agriculture, and only 10% is the people, which basically means that industries are monopolizing the city infrastructure that is built. And as a result, people lose out. Now, I think that is not the fault of the users, but rather the fact that it's just impossible for a central system to keep up with growing demands. And then on top of it, you get, a big vinyl chloride dump, into the aquifer. And now you have to take extra special precautions, which again, the utilities are not set up for. Where people are going in their own homes is towards individual filtration. I personally think that entities like Norfolk Southern are going to have to pay for people to have their water purification in home. Bottled water is not a solution. Forget about it. It needs to be done properly. But let's take a look at businesses, right? Remember, 90%. If they are 90% of the load and the system is overloaded, then take load off. And okay, so you get the general idea. It goes, and you know the story. So that was very, very good coverage. Hunter Gaylor really drilled down and got into it. So that was excellent. Let's continue now to the next thing that occurred, and that was on Monday. Here we go. I was already in Atlanta for the thing that happened next, so you'll see I'm in a hotel.
Thanks for watching Afternoon Live. Here in the Northwest, we tend to take our fresh, clean water for granted, but our next guest knows not all water is created equal. From distilled to alkaline, he's here to tell us what we need to know about bottled water and so much more. We welcome water consultant Riggs Eckelberry is with us today. Riggs, thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure, Kara. Thank you.
It's so interesting because here in the Northwest, we are very, very lucky with such good water. But when you go to buy water and you're looking at the store, there's so many different types. I mean, I mentioned them already, the alkaline, there's vitamin water, there's filtered water, there's distilled water. Which one is the right one? Is there actually a certain one?
Well, in general, you should not be buying bottled water. The environmental cost and even health cost of bottled water is very high, because, of course, you're putting it in plastic, and plastic can leach. But there's so many steps involved in taking it from the source to retail. Now, in emergency, drink the bottled water. I was doing that just now on the plane, and it is what it is, right? But in general, you should have, in your office or home, you should have purified water, which immediately says, well, how much should I spend? There's the next big question.
So exactly that. So you should have purified water. What does that look like? What are some ways to do that?
Well, the simplest way, of course, is to have one of those pitchers, like a Brita-style pitcher. They're not incredibly efficient. They get a lot of stuff out of the tap water. First of all, just so we all agree, tap water is not great. In America, tap water will not kill you right away because we do make sure that it doesn't have bacteria and so forth. They do a good job of that. But there's a lot of toxins from the groundwater, and we've seen issues with chemicals released into the aquifers that can contribute to bad water. So with that in mind, we have the idea of, first of all, a pitcher. Then you have these gravity-fed water purifiers, which I'm not going to name brands, but they're silver, and they use these black carbon filters. They're very good, actually, and you can have them by your sink. So that's, a couple $100. Then the jump to, under sink reverse osmosis, that is the Cadillac, and that's, $600-700. A lot of people try to advertise, get a whole home system. And what we did in our condo that we purchased when we moved to Florida was whole home, but just enough to take, called ultrafiltration. And then we concentrated the reverse osmosis under the sink. And then we had special shower heads because remember that the skin absorbs toxins in the shower.
What about boiling water? Does that do anything to it?
Boiling it?
Uh-huh.
Well, okay, unless you're in a let's say there's a big alert, oh my gosh, there's, streptococcus in the water, whatever. As I say, the municipalities do a good job of sterilizing the water. They put in bleach, and then they remove it. They're very sophisticated about that. What they do have a harder time with is the increasing amount of industrial toxins. It's not their fault. They're dealing with the best they can. But we're living in a world where there's more and more toxins in the water, and people need to not assume the tap water is okay, including for their pet.
So what is alkaline water exactly?
Alkaline water simply is water that it's more mineral. it's less acidic, right? And some people claim that it's good for you. I personally don't know for sure. Generally, when you get one of those reverse osmosis systems under your sink, it will include a remineralizer, very important because the RO takes everything out. So remineralize, and then sometimes you can get one of those units that increase the pH, that is, reduce the acidity, and now you've got nice alkaline water. I personally think it's good to have. I don't know about the scientific basis.
What's the difference between distilled and purified water?
Well, distilled has everything taken out, and you should not make it a steady diet because it's basically dead water, right? It's been completely, just like how they make alcohol, right? So it's been dripped out and there's nothing left. Purified generally still has the minerals in it, and that's a good thing.
What about vitamin water? That's just adding in the vitamins. Do you agree with that?
Well, okay, first of all, watch out that in the process you're not getting sugars because that loses the whole point. But I think vitamins are good. Frankly, vitamin water is probably overpriced vitamins. But then again, I actually believe that, you should try and get vitamins any way you can because our food is kind of deficient these days.
And what about when you could put something on your own tap water as far as filtering it?
Sure. Again, you can, and you bring up a very good point, and they have those inline sink faucet purifiers, and that can be good. Generally, it goes through a carbon filter, and you get pretty decent water. It's not a bad solution.
Okay, thank you so much for breaking this all down and taking on my many questions. Thanks, Riggs.
Thank you, Carol.
Yes, you can learn a lot more information about Riggs on our website at katcu.com. Don't go away. We'll be right back with more Afternoon Live right after this.
And this is Fox 5.
It's 9:09. Coming up on Good Day Atlanta, the Earth consists of nearly 330 trillion gallons of water. But when it comes to your drinking water, what's the best option? Up next, water expert and founder of Origin Clear, Riggs Eckleberry, is here with which one is right for you. Welcome back. Well, purified, distilled, sparkling, so many more. There are lots of options when it comes to water. So what should you be drinking and what should we avoid? Water expert and founder of Origin Clear, Riggs Eckleberry, is joining us now with some answers. Welcome. It's good to have you here.
Such a pleasure, Lise. Thank you.
It's not often that we have, I told you, a water expert in our presence. So we're going to take advantage of this in a really big way. So World Water Day, want to mention that's March 22nd. So some really good timing for us to cover this. Let's start with a kind of water that's common. We seem to see it a lot on grocery store shelves and, maybe even in restaurants. Sparkling water, pros and cons.
Well, sparkling water is basically water that's had CO2 added, right? So I don't consider, you need to go below and think about what's the quality of the water itself. But sparkling's great. Okay. You can digest better. That's the benefit.
Okay. What about spring water?
Well, spring water, that's a commercial term, so you got to watch out. Generally, it means that it's water that has come from a spring, it's been purified, which is good because it still has the minerals.
Okay, it's good to know. Listen, you're already teaching me that. I didn't know. You see the word, right? And you're like, oh, okay, we trust you. Tap water, what we have in our homes.
Okay, now, this is long before your time, but I grew up when you could drink the tap water. I don't think that's true anymore. It's not that it'll kill you because the cities do a great job of getting the chlorine, with chlorine, getting the bacteria out. But we have industrial toxins. And so generally for you and your pets, long-term drinking of tap water is not recommended.
Wow. Okay, so then what is? Now, are you talking about just, what we're seeing in the video? You turn on your sink, you run the water, just that. But what about like water that's coming out of our refrigerator? Are you considering that tap water or has that gone through a process?
Well, there's a filter usually on your fridge. Yeah. And so it's been somewhat filtered. Look, any improvement's good, right? You want to be able to have, for example, one of these filter pitchers are useful for your water. Also, there's those gravity-fed tanks, the silver tanks that you can put on your counter with these carbon filters. They're great. You can do a lot with a small budget. You can do fancy stuff, with under sink. It's called reverse osmosis. And that's what this is. Basically, they took water and they ran it through with reverse osmosis, which is basically forcing water through a very heavy filter. and they added minerals back in. And that's key. You want the minerals back in the water.
So what kind of water is this then? Like, what do they call that once they do that?
It's a brand, but what it is pH balanced, purified water. And there's a lot of these brands.
Would that be like smart water? Would that be one? Or what would be
smart water is similar because electrolytes. You want to have the minerals in the water. For example, distilled water is great, except it's got nothing in it. It's dead water.
Okay.
So if you do drink distilled water, you're safe, but you'd better take your minerals somehow.
Oh,
right?
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. So I just want to be clear on this. So you're saying that as a water expert and someone who, I mean, you do this for a living, you wouldn't go to your sink, pour yourself a big old glass of water and drink that water in that way.
Well, I flew up here last night and I did, when I was taking my vitamins this morning, I did drink from the tap. It's not going to kill you.
Yeah.
I'm talking about years of habit should not be on the tap water. Now, we have a problem in America because now you're having to pay, in addition to your water supply, you're having to pay for it to be filtered.
Right.
It's too bad. But as I say, there's simple things you can do. We, for example, we work at the industrial level. My company, Origin Clear, does whole hotels, for example. And increasingly, the hotels are realizing that guests want to have purified water, not just that bottle on the dresser, but in the shower, because toxins come in through your skin. Right? Also in the kitchen when they make the food, the whole hotel. So increasingly we're thinking about every single way that you drink water.
That's interesting. That really is. I never thought about those other aspects. The shower part of it, right? Like, I guess that does make a difference in the water that's coming out of there. So that's really good to know. Okay, so you mentioned vitamin water. We talked about that. Did we talk about purified water?
Yeah, this is purified water.
Okay, so that's the one.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, I mean, what are some other things, though, that we can do because everybody doesn't have access, right, to be able to buy, some fancy water? What are some small things that we can do to make a difference in just having healthier water? Okay,
for starters, let's get away from plastic bottled water. First of all, bottled water itself is a very energy intensive and cost intensive process. There's a lot of markup. You're basically being ripped off, right? As soon as possible, you should try and get your own reusable glass or metal bottle and fill it with good water. Now, where does that good water come from? Well, here's a source. For example, Brita and other manufacturers make a bottle that has a built-in filter. Great. Now you can either use this as is or pour this into your reusable bottle. The important thing is to try and get away from the plastic.
Okay, and then when you have those things with filters, you got to change the filters. I think the light's been on my refrigerator for, it's been a couple weeks, so I got to make sure you do that. Well, yeah. Okay, days.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to say, just a few days. But that matters.
Eventually it does matter. But here's the thing. Anything you do is good. For example, put one of those water pitchers on your counter, fill it, and just pour from it. That's all you got to do, really, right?
Yeah.
It's not a giant thing. If you can, try and get one of those under sink systems. It's $600-700. Well worth it, because that's that little tap that comes out of your sink, and that's reverse osmosis water. It's very pure, and it's included in it is a remineralizer to put the minerals back in. Got to have that, right? So that is a good solution. And also, I was recommended to put a filter on my shower, a shower filter. There's a brand called Promax, which is what I used, and it takes out the Roundup, for example, which is not good in the long term. So little things like that solve a lot of problems.
Good to know. And then obviously, as far as drinking it, make sure you're getting enough of it. But that's a conversation for another day.
No matter what, drink a lot of water. I agree.
All right. All ahead of National Water Day on March 22nd. Riggs Eckelberry with Origin Clear, thank you so much for coming in and for breaking some of this down for us. It's been helpful. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Elise. I appreciate it.
Pleasure to meet you. And if you'd like more information, because we've covered a lot. So if you want to see some more about this, you can head to our website, fox5atlanta.com. Just look for the story under the Good Day section.
Fascinating. So, yeah, I mean, obviously we were getting into consumer stuff because you talk about the stuff that the TV stations will cover, right? And I've learned that it's not so easy to get coverage for industrial water treatment. But what's working here now is that, for example, this afternoon I did an interview about this. I don't know if you heard the story about this man who died rinsing his nose up with tap water, and he got this flesh-eating bacteria and he died. Anyway, the point I was able to make, and I think this is one that ties it together well, is that whenever you have centralized systems, they may clean the water, but then somewhere in the distribution network, things get degraded, and then you get something not so good, right? That's what happened, for example, in Flint with the pipes, the lead pipes. The water was clean, but not the pipes. So that's why we want water treatment on site, because if it's right there, you can trust it. That's why these hotels that I keep talking about, that I have still not been able to say who it is, but believe me, we are now working on our second hotel in that chain. They want that whole hotel water treatment, and reverse osmosis does take out that nasty amoeba. I'll hope to cover that show next week. All right. I have some very cool news for you. We have named our brand ambassador, Estrella Nouri. And here is the press release that came out tonight, that she has chosen to champion clean water as her cause. And she is raising awareness for water on demand, talking about how it's the cause that she wants to get into. Here she is, that she wants to help people around the world have clean, fresh water, et cetera, and make it a global movement. And in addition to the investing opportunity, of course, do something about the world, right? So with that, here she is. And I wanted to say that several times a year, she goes to Italy to model for Guest Marciano. She's a very talented lady. And she's also a comedian, and she's super scientific as well. I'd like to welcome Estrella Nouri.
Hello.
So nice to see you. And
Thank you.
You have a lovely water background.
Thank you. I hope you like it. We're kind of matching. I'm so happy to be here.
It's such a pleasure. You know, it was lovely be in December at my brother's Topanga Canyon house, and it was a lovely afternoon. And I remember very clearly that you managed to take our somewhat geeky story, and you it's recycling, right, Rick? So yeah, it's recycling.
You helped me also just make sure that I understand it. And then that way I was like, okay, I get this. And then this way I can continue to share it. And you were very scientific about it. And I just, brought it down to the point where I can understand it. And it was really fun. So.
Well, that's really, we're literally days away from this. Our investors have been looking for this unaccredited investor round, the Regulation A, to finally launch. And it's fine. We've been ironing out bugs, whatever. It's happening. And in order to make that work, though, you have to appeal to everyday people. Notice you were probably listening to shows, and they were very consumery. What kind of water should I drink? They're not like, well, what kind of water treatment does Intel need? And whatever. No, it's too far away from people's needs. Now it's all together because bad water, because of bad infrastructure, affects people, right?
Absolutely.
That's where we really want to drive the message home. And so what are your plans? I mean, how are you going to be, talking about us? I'm very intrigued.
Well, thank you. Well, I just feel proud to be here. And I feel so proud to be a part of, I call this like the clean water revolution, And for me, it's about sharing what you taught me and simplifying it where I can fully just bring people and have them be involved. Because when you bring in investors, not only are they getting a return, but they're actually changing the planet. So to be able to do that via social media, via my friends and my family, via this. So yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be an exciting journey.
And of course, we'll have events.
Great.
That it's probably a bit tight to get you to World Water Day on the 22nd in New York, but we're going to have other opportunities. And because yes, we can get you there, but we want to promote it properly. So we don't want to just have a throwaway event. But it's already very exciting because our super talented chief engineer, Dan Early, is going to be there. And there's a wonderful clip that will be next week where the team that installed this particular system at a mobile home park in Pennsylvania describes it, and it goes into it, and it's got the 3D drawings and the videos, and you thought, oh, wow, I get how cool this is, right? Because you think, well, it's a box, whatever, right? Well, there's always more to it than people think, right?
Mm-hmm.
And really the challenge is, it's fairly easy to build these giant water systems, but then Miniaturizing is always the challenge. So how do we bring it down to the size of a business and housing development, farm, et cetera? And we have that. We have that technology. And then, of course, we have what you're representing, which is the way to magically put people onto a contract where it takes care of it and they can, float on to do whatever they do, like make beer, and they don't have to worry about that foolish water thing. And people love it. We are putting together a very tight synergy between modular water and water on demand. It's going to be more about that. Because here's the thing: modular water is talking to customers, to what's called the specifying engineer early on. And when we tell the specifying engineer right at the beginning, there's an option for a full service installation. That's when you want to do it. Not 6 months later when they've worked their way through the financing options, they finally figured it out, and you say, "Oh, by the way, you could have it on a certain." Like, well, we just raised the money and we did the whole thing. So you have to catch them when they are in need, right?
Absolutely, I agree.
So that is the key.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely.
And the truth about our regular business is that we tend to talk to customers who already have their act together, because that's who puts out the bids. But these aren't. We want to talk to the silent majority that need it, haven't figured out how to get it. That is going to be through this partnership with Modular Water. So excited about that.
So just so I have an understanding of this partnership, helps find those companies that are in need of it right now.
Right. So when Modular Water is out there talking to potential customers,
Got it.
and they're hearing about it still as a problem, right?
Right.
Not as a solution. It's not been solved. And they hear about the problem and they say, "Okay, Mr. Jones, you're the specifying engineer. You're the one who's come out there to do the specs, like what is needed at that site.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, we have a turnkey system that just sign here and full maintenance, pay by the gallon, just on the meter, like your customers, your clients accustomed to from the city. We'll do it the same way." And they'll go, "Oh, good to know," right? So that dramatically increases the chances of us being able to bring that there. And that's really the key. So Modular Water, first of all, has been doing an amazing job. The sales have been booming. It's such a wonderful thing they're doing. They're working night and day. It's so cool. Well, it wasn't always that way. Ken will, when he comes on, he'll tell us, we went through years of, I think 2019 was a $250,000 year for modular water systems. And then, oh my God. But finally now we're estimated to be north of $1 million a quarter, and it's growing from there. So that is really wonderful. And there's going to be so much more about that. You're going to be part of the whirlwind.
I love it. And just listening to you helps me even understand it more, because for the people that are listening, just so I make sure I have a clear understanding. So let's say I have I'm opening up what's a good example? An energy drink company,
Okay,
right?
Yep.
And I need 1,000 gallons of water. That water, without water demand coming and putting in that water system, that without water on demand, I would have to raise about $500,000 to recycle that 1,000 gallons of water that I might need per day.
Right. Exactly. And you're right that it's these relatively small, like for example, the one that we're going to show next week, and I hope that you're able to watch it from the
You're part of it.
comfort of your living room, or you might even want to show up and
Yeah, I'll show up.
Hey, why not? Love it.
I'm warming up to this.
It's like a nice version of The View, right? Anyway, Hollywood Squares. Anyway, so what we'll have, they're talking about an installation of a 10,000 gallon per day system for a mobile home park. So a couple hundred, those mobile homes, and it's a common sewage system for them. Typically, they're disconnected from the city grid, and they need that. And so that is going to illustrate the problem. So now they paid for theirs. It was, I don't know, $340,000. Let's say I'm not sure exactly what it was. I will know next week. But that was something they took care of, and they had an engineer, and they have a water guy, and this and that. We need more water gals. What is all these water guys?
Well, you got a water gal right here, so.
Right on. That's a good start. So So right around that 10,000 to 30,000 gallons per day is considered relatively small. And that's our sweet spot because the big companies like Veolia, American Waterworks, they want a $10 million project, not a $1 million project, right? Or they want or 100 million. That's they don't scale down well. But the bulk of the business is these smaller sites. But to make it work, you've got to automate. You've got to have the system that we'll show next week is called Avera Skid because it's literally on a skid, which is a platform. And so there's 4 models, 10K, 5K, 10K, 15K, and 20K per day. Boom, that's it. That's what you get. And so by standardizing it, it takes the extra cost out of all this customization.
Okay.
That's the key. We are bringing finally the magic of the Henry Ford assembly line to water.
I love that. And we are saving the planet at the same time because when that water is being used instead of the companies dumping it away, now they're purifying it and reusing it. And I don't understand why everyone wouldn't jump on that. So, yeah.
Well, it's true. And again, part of it is technology, downsizing things so that they fit in that little corner of your brewery. And second, the money. It's the money stupid, right?
Right.
So we're going to have a lot more talks about this. I want to bring on Mr. Ken Berenger this is the normal two grouchy guys freewheeling discussion.
Yeah, it used to be 3. Actually, this all started when Riggs' computer crapped out, and Andrea and I, we were like, okay, so we're not going to tell jokes, so let's talk about, and we actually got into hi Estrella, how are you, honey?
Hi.
We just got into this discussion, and we were able to kind of it's kind of like a behind the scenes thing. What Riggs was talking about, something kept resonating in my head, the scale down, the small business, blah, blah, blah. So when you often hear about economics, they say how 2/3 of our economy in America are what? Small businesses, right? So at least 2/3 of our water consumption is done by small businesses, right? So the ability to be able to connect to them and directly provide them with a private utility, you almost say to yourself, and I talk to investors a lot about this, I'm like, why hasn't anybody done this yet? Well, there's always a question that's asked, right? Why didn't somebody do Amazon before they did Amazon? And the truth is, with Amazon, it's because the technology didn't exist. They had to go first. They had to spend a fortune making mistakes. We were able to kind of grab that model, right, and adapt it. But the reality is, it wasn't done in our field as well because the technology wasn't there until Dan came along as this lone voice in the wilderness and talked about shrinking these things down. Everyone was chasing after the big $1 billion contract, right?
So true. Because remember, June 2018, you and I were there, and we bring in Dan. It was a leap of faith because decentralized water was not a thing. I was a voice in the wilderness. Dan was doing it 15 years before. Literally, he was the pioneer. And it's since 2018 until now, it has blossomed. And today he's got more business than he can possibly handle. It's coming at him like ridiculous. And we're throwing people in nonstop. It's crazy.
Yeah, and he keeps saying, I need more people. I need more people. Like, okay. Another thing too, Dan was talking about decentralized water before the public knew what the hell decentralized was. What happened? Crypto kind of adopted decentralized currency, and it was so popular I don't want to talk about my crypto experience, but millions and millions and millions and small investors, right? I mean, who invested the heck out of crypto was a lot of small investors. And all of a sudden people, it was repeated so much about decentralization and, not relying on the Fed and all that stuff. So people started to intuitively understand what decentralization was. I don't think before 2018, 9 out of 10 people, if you said, what is decentralization, would be able to answer the question. And I think 9 out of 10 now would be able to at least give a very rudimentary answer, thank you, crypto, for helping us. Thank you for the tax write-offs. Appreciate those. And I've got them for a good decade, which is good. But also thank you for helping the world understand the the terminology, which was, I think, is, I mean, we talk about it. I wish we could talk about the things here that we talk about behind the scenes, because it is so exciting. And this thing is taking on just a life of its own. And the marriage between the two entities, the yin and the yang, right? The intellectual property, and then the facilitator, right? The thing that facilitates that brilliant intellectual property. Part of what Dan's remember you mentioned the $250,000 year, right? We were going, oh boy. So, because any good story takes time for it to be understood and adopted. But also, even when it started to hit its stride, even the experience that we see today, 9 out of 10 targets go, that's exactly what I need. The only thing I don't have is the $1 million. Can you help me out? I was like, right? Talked to an investor today, and I was like, how many, if you were a real estate agent, how many homes would you sell if everyone was a cash buyer? Not many, right? But that's what the purchasers of these systems are forced to do. They're forced to be cash buyers, essentially. And that limits and of course, like you said, Estrella, that limits the amount of water that can be recycled, right? By a factor of 9, right? So if we can just get these out to the edges where it's creating all the problems, what happens is, and we talked about the consumer, the people that drink the water, we're forced to deal with their inability to handle the problem. And the reason we don't drink tap water, and Riggs and I joked about it, I'm old enough to have drank from the hose when I was a kid, right? My kid went to go drink from the hose recently. I was like, get out of here. What are you doing? Because we know what's in it, right? But it was actually safe to do 40 years ago. But decades and decades and decades of just dumping it into our waterways has left us with a chronic health problem. I mean, even in America, the richest nation on earth, we have a chronic health problem as a direct result of our food, which I will have another conversation on another day about processed foods, but also the chemical composition of our water. And like Rick said, you'd only go 4 days without water. If we can bend the curve on that, you said 3 times in your conversation tonight, hon, that if we can we can save the planet, and I don't think that's actually hyperbole.
I agree.
I mean, you said we could save, and you said it 3 times. I think that by bending the curve on this thing and begin to undo what's taken decades to do, we could do it much more rapidly than it was done, by the way. We can undo it more rapidly than it was done.
Absolutely.
We can start to affect the course of human health over time, which is like this. I mean, Matt, think about how grandiose that statement is. It almost sounds crazy, but it's really very practical. And I'm thrilled to have you on board.
Thank you.
And it's going to be an exciting ride.
I can't wait. I'm very happy to be here, and I agree with everything that you said. So,
see that, Riggs, keep her around. She agrees with everything I say. So, can you come back next week, please?
I am definitely going to be here next week for sure.
So in one of our next pitch battles, I'll go. Hang on a second. I'm 3-weighing Estrella on. Hang on.
I'll be like, yeah, he's right.
I want to quickly make a comment. We were talking about that 250,000. That right there. 2019 was 392,000. This is modular water. 2020 was 232,000, and that's when we were like, oh my God. And then finally, 21 we got up to 1 million. Our forecast here is about close to 3 million, and then it starts, 4 million, which is $1 million a quarter, and on up from there. These are conservative forecasts, by the way. Now, quickly, Marshall Barrel asked when will your financials be filed. The date for our annual report is April 15th, and we believe we'll deliver it on time. Robert Baxter asked about structured water. Structured water is water that's been brought back to life, right? Because water can be dead when it's treated, and then there's ways to make it so that it's structure.
You mean remineralize it? Are you saying
it's got bone structure? It's got bone structure.
Lovely bone structure. So are you talking about remineralizing? Is that essentially what
it includes? That plus electrolysis. I think that it's a process.
Okay.
Bring it back to life. Because when you recycle water again and again, it dies.
Right. It's like soil. right? If you
I
keep
don't know
planning
that.
and planning and planning and planning and planning, you have dead soil, right?
All right. So with that, Marcus Walker, I'm so happy to be part of this dream that we're doing, and it's becoming a reality. And I so agree. This has been a great little show. As always, I never like to go over an hour because I get bored. So don't want our audience to get bored.
No.
I don't think anybody got bored with this one. With the lovely Estrella. Thank you, dear. It's been great having you on board.
Is this it?
That's
We're
it.
ending? I'm just
It
getting
was over. Right. Yeah. It's a.
So listen,
started.
let's have a coffee.
It's a 1 hour variety show. The sponsor won't let us go past that.
I'm a talker. I usually, are we sure we're ending it at 1 hour? Okay, so I'm gonna. Okay, got
You
it.
just have to come back. Listen, hold that thought. Hold that, whatever that thought is. Write it down. We'll pick that up next week.
Okay, absolutely.
We'll have a coffee clutch.
Yes.
All right. Well, Estrella from Los Angeles, thank you so much.
Right,
And
thank you.
near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, near the blighted Ohio River Valley.
Yeah, that's always fun.
But more about that.
My shower filters are arriving Saturday, by the way.
The ones that
You're in Ohio?
I'm in Pittsburgh. Well, I'm just outside Pittsburgh, but the area that I'm in, so the two counties just north of me, I'm in Westmoreland County. It's fine. It's the country. It's good. But I'm so totally paranoid with my kids anyway.
Of course.
The two counties north of me, like 20 miles away, 25 miles away, they get their water from the Ohio River. And we've had people that I know that are in Cranberry, right by the Riggs, right where we did that installation, that car dealership. That's called Mars, PA. That's right near Cranberry. People's dogs are getting gravely ill from drinking, because you fill your bowl tap water, for the dogs. So now they're having to give their dogs bottled water.
Well, how about purification, for God's sake? Anyway.
Yeah.
Tonight, it was really cool being on Fox 5 and on ABC2.
Oh, I love that interview.
Cool. Newsmax, all these things are great. We're going to get more and more of that. And I think water awareness is growing fast. Thank you, everyone. Marcus Walker, you guys are the best. I support you 100%. Robert Baxter, good night, guys. Tom Diakos, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Estrella. Thank you, Ken. Let's have a good night. Great weekend. And we're going to have an incredible show next week. So many good things. Do join us.
Good night now.
Okay.
Peace out.
Bye.